Hello comrades, the Honey Badger here with yet another industry layout guide. This one is tried and tested. I've already built it in my Siberia Done Right series. It's about electronics, plastics, electrical components and mechanical components. This time I'm gonna keep the topic short. Just look in the YouTube description or at the YouTube's play bar. You have all of the topics spread over there. No reason for me to repeat myself. Starting off with research. There's a lot of research and it highly depends if you're playing on early start DLC or without the early start DLC. Personally, I will include the early start DLC. In here, you need to firstly research chemistry. Afterwards, semiconductors. Be very careful, 1932 is the date you can research it. Then electronic circuits. This one is 1934. 10 years later, you can research plastics also. But this is kind of useless because you won't have access to modern industry until 1958. Why am I mentioning this? Well, one of the few industries that have different requirements for each era is the electrical and electronics assembly halls. Basically, the electronics assembly halls need boards for early start DLC and plastics for modern area. The same for electrical components factory. It needs gravel for the early start DLC and plastics for the modern industry. Afterwards, the next thing that you need to research, regardless of the DLC or not, is the engineering. This is to produce mechanical components. As for where all of these resources are needed, well, starting off with mechanical components, these are used to build industrial buildings. Basically, everything that has a machine in it, it will need mechanical components to be built. Also, you're gonna need them for your vehicles production line, together with airplanes, dry docks, etc. So basically everything that means building and maintaining vehicles. Afterwards, electrical components are used in your electrical grids. Currently, it's disabled, but trust me, you're gonna need them there. Also, to power up your electrified rail. As you can see, we're gonna need electrical components over here. Then, plastics is needed to maintain and build your vehicles. As we can see, these ones will have plastics needed. And electronics, of course, it makes use of mechanical components, electrical components, and plastics in order to be built. As for the electronics, they are used in multiple places. Firstly, for your population. It keeps the population happy and you can sell it to tourists for expensive prices. Then, the electronics are also used in maintaining your vehicles, as we can see over here in the vehicle repair station, and they are used when building airplanes. It goes without saying that these things are the most expensive items in your republic. Rushing to build this industry as your third or fourth industry right after you've finished oil industry will help your republic stay afloat for many years, and it will completely save you from debt. Let's start off with the early start DLC build. This one is not mandatory to be built nearby the oil industry, however, bonus points for later down the line in case you really want to reuse the terrain and maybe demolish the factories once you unlock the modern ones and build those instead. So let's start off by firstly placing a warehouse. We're gonna go with the warehouse that is provided by the early start DLC. This is the biggest one that we have. Make sure the road is pointing in a specific direction. Basically, I want the trains to come from the right side of the screen, and the road needs to also be on the right side of the screen. This is important for later down the line. So I've placed it down over here, and afterwards I'm going to need 2 electrical components factories. These electrical components factories, as we can see, uses gravel, steel and chemicals. The chemicals will be provided by this warehouse, the steel will be provided by another warehouse that we're gonna build, and the gravel the same. So, the way that I like to do it is to make sure that I leave some space over here and the road is pointing outwards. You see the connection that is being created. It's important for that connection to connect over there. On this side, we're gonna do it like this. On the other side, we're gonna mirror it, but this time we're going to connect in the inner one and also leaving some space in order to build the mechanical components factory. So somewhere around here should be perfectly fine. Afterwards, for the mechanical components factory, the road will point towards the very first one that we've built. Just like this should be perfectly fine. Be very careful to not cover the factory connections of the two electrical components factories. Just like this. Basically, this will allow us to create a road over here that will go above this said factory connection. There we go. Afterwards, behind it, we're going to need to place an open storage medium. It's important that this open storage has access to the rail connection. And then we're gonna place it in a way that allows us to connect all three factories together. Let's see if the connection is possible. It's too much of a sharp turn, so we are going to delete it and replace it. There we go, all three connections are free and the road is pointing outwards again. Perfect. The next thing we want to do is to make the road connection over here together with the rail connection. It's important for the road and rail connection to be as close as possible between them, because afterwards we are going to need gravel for the electrical components. That is done by building a 1000 ton gravel area, which we're gonna specifically point to the road itself. Bonus points if you can build it as close as possible to the road over here. Afterwards, on this side, we are going to go with a conveyor engine transfer. Bonus points if you are going to use the highest one possible. Just like this should be perfectly fine. As you can see already, the connections are directly possible. So let's build it somewhere around here. Perfect. This will allow us to store the gravel and use it in both electrical factories. Now let's handle the road for this connection. Afterwards, we're going to need a rail unloading station for gravel. Just like this. I'm using the smallest aggregate train station unloading because we are using very little gravel. So we don't need a large train to deliver gravel always over here. Let's connect the roads properly. I'm going to delete part of this road because we are going to need to connect this conveyor on the other side, just like this. It looks a bit weird and a bit clunky, but hey, this is the way to do it. Afterwards, you can come over here with your rail line however you want, and also stretch it from here. Of course, you will have some train blockages over here if you're using more than one train to load and unload, but if you want, just watch my signaling guide and redo this connection. I just rushed it over here. Now, coming back on this side, we're also going to need to build the electronics assembly hall, which we are going to do over here, just like this. And nearby it, we're gonna place an open storage in order to get our boards in place. Again, I'm using the real way. It's not mandatory, but if you can do it, why not? And this should be our entire area. If you want to also include the oil refinery over here, and also you got in plans for plastics, you can simply extend this road over here and then build two plastics factory. One on this side, like this, and one on the other side, like this. The last thing that we can build is the bus stop itself. It can be a bus stop, a train stop, a tram stop, it really doesn't matter as long as you get citizens over here. Now, one more thing to mention. You're going to notice that the bus stop can only reach the plastics and the warehouse itself. We're gonna need to also make sure that they can reach the electrical components and the electronics assembly hall. For the electronics assembly hall, it's pretty simple. Just do this, and you're gonna be done with it. There we go. Now the bus stop can reach the electronics. For the other three buildings, it will be slightly more difficult. Namely, you're going to need to use pedestrian underpasses connecting over here and then going up until here once. You can even firstly build the gravel layout and then build the underpass. And one more on this side. Now, if you're going to build the pedestrian tunnels and also connect the road over here, you are able to notice that from the bus stop, you will be able to reach all of the industries. And this is kind of all about the early start build. Of course, related to trains, electricity, and water, you got separate guides for them. Just watch them to see how to connect these. It shouldn't be that difficult to figure it out. And in case you don't know how to deliver resources over here with the said trains, then watch my distribution office guides. Also, one more thing we're gonna need to do is to limit the amount of items over here. In here, we are not going to get any crops. We're gonna just need chemicals, which I'm gonna set to 10%. We are going to need electrical components, which I'm gonna set to 20%, 20% on mechanical components, and 20% on plastics, and another 20% on electronics. Let's see, we still have 10%. Why not set it to the chemicals themselves yet again? There we go. This will allow you to have at least 70 tons of electronics ready to be delivered. One more bonus tip over here. Your city is not using that many electronics. Therefore, what I recommend is, instead of delivering the electronics from the warehouse using a train station, the best thing would be to deliver it using a normal distribution office. Basically, just place one of the distribution offices. I'm just gonna use the free ones over here. Buy some cover tools, whatever, and simply select this as a loading station for your electronics. You can also do electronical components and mechanical components and plastics, and then deliver it to your city or your building area, whatever. One more thing, we did not discuss how chemicals are going to get into this area and how you're gonna export the excess. This is done by a cargo train station. You won't need more than 2 entries at the cargo train station. I've tried it with 4 and it felt overkill, to be honest, just because you're dealing with very low amounts of transported goods. Now, the road needs to point towards the electrical components, not towards the plastics. This is important because later down the line, you're going to also include the recycling itself of the plastics. So let's place it over here. And then connect it to the road. Also on this side. Seems like the bridge still needed one more thing. There we go. Now every single building should be connected to a road and it's easily serviceable and maintained. The only exception that I see is this pedestrian underpass over here. Because it doesn't have a road connection, you're going to have problems with wear and tear. That's a small price to pay. And what you can actually do is to try and leave some space over here for a road and then start building the bridge itself. So maybe do something like this and then start building the bridge upwards. If it doesn't directly work, you can build small each time and then it will automatically connect. Let's see if it's possible. If not, it seems like we're gonna need to move it a bit more. There we go. A bit weird, but hey, if it works, I am happy. There we go. Now the final thing is to attempt and connect the road from over here to this place, even by just building the underground overpass on the other side. And now basically your maintaining vehicles will also have access to build over there. Of course, you can reconnect it underground just like this. And that's kind of all for the early start DLC planning. I know it was slightly rushed, but that's because electronics in early start, I wouldn't quite recommend doing an entire industry layout over there. It's more meaningful in the modern era where you can actually have it in a permanent location. This is just a temporary setup for the first 30 years that you're gonna play the game. Before moving to the modern layout, let's explain why early start DLC build is not something you really desire to use for long periods of time. Please note that I did have to re-record the modern layout since I noticed something interesting. Namely, the electrical components and the electronics recipe get more resources and less output the more the game progresses. This is because when I was calculating the profits, I also included Siberia Done Right series in the mix. And I noticed over there that the production is way different. Well, anyway, enough babbling, let's check the code. And now time to geek it out a bit. Basically what you're seeing on the screen is for the electrical components factory. The workers needed is 150 workers. The production means how much each single worker produces. That means an output is 3.75 production for all 150 workers. The consumption means how much each single worker will consume per workday. Now for the consumption, you're gonna get 1.5 tons of plastics, 1.5 tons of steel, and 1.2 tons of chemicals per workday used. This is the baseline. That's how much in 1960s you will need and you will produce. Now let's check the increase and decrease. The increase happens to a maximum of 170%, and the end year is 2104, when consumption will stagnate at 2.55 tons of plastic, 2.55 tons of steel, and 2.04 tons of chemicals. The decrease also happens in the production. You're gonna get up to 30% electrical components, and the end year is in 2044, when the production will be just a mere 1.1 electronic components. Let's do the same for the electronics too. Baseline over here is 4.5 electronics, 1.5 electronic components, 1.5 mechanical components, and 2.25 plastics. The cost increase happens to 200% this time. The end year is 2160, when the consumption will stagnate at 3 electro components, 3 mechanical components, and 4.5 plastics. The production decreases also to 30%. The end year is 2037, when you will get a mere 1.35 tons of electronics per day. What I said until now is just for the modern one. What about the early start DLC layout? Well, I'm just gonna tell the years, and it really goes to utter garbage. You will decide for yourself when early start DLC layout is no longer good. I myself, I can only recommend to just scrap it as soon as you can build the modern era one. Or just don't build it at all and wait for the modern era. For electric components, the end year it's 2100 for the consumption when it doubles, and 2026 when it goes to 20% output. For electronics, it's 2130 for consumption when it doubles, and 2018 for when the production goes to 20%. To add on top of everything, the early start DLC already has a very low production, half of the modern era ones. With that out of the way, let's check an year 2160 how much you're gonna need consumption per workday. Well, for 1.35 tons of electronics, you're gonna need 3 electro components, 3 mechanical components, and 4.50 tons of plastics. For 1.1 electro components, you're also going to need 2.55 plastics, 2.55 steel, and 2.04 chemicals. Plastics, of course, stay at 6.6 tons, and mechanical components also stay at 15 tons the whole period. Therefore, if we are planning a factory layout which will forever serve you at max capacity, even in 2160, then mandatory we're going to need at least 2 plastic factories, 1 electronic factory, 4 electro components factory, and 1 mechanical components factory. Let's build it together, shall we? Firstly, start off with a land where you got around 600-ish meters in one direction and 700-ish meter in the other direction. Then start off with your first cargo, the warehouse, the biggest one that we have in modern era. Let's point the road towards the left side on the south. Just like this over here should be perfectly fine. Then build the road a bit, just so you can get a feel for it. Afterwards, let's start off with fossil fuels and go to the plastics factory. kind reminder. Make sure that everything that is built over here, you are building it firstly in blueprint mode. Namely, go for a realistic build from resources firstly. The plastics factory will go at the end over here. Try as much as possible to leave as much room as humanly possible and make sure that the plastics factory face each other. Just like this should be perfectly fine. Make sure that the inputs are facing towards the warehouse just as I am doing it over here. The one near the road, you can hug it a bit more than the one on the left side. Like this should be fine. Now build a road in the middle and connect it on both sides. Perfect. On the other side, we are going to have the rail yard. Again, I recommend using the 2-line ones, the cargo train station that also has in the middle the connection point. As for the road, it truly doesn't matter if it points on the left, on the south side or north side. I'm just gonna go on the south side just to see. In my tests, I went on the north side, so hopefully this also works. Let's see, somewhere around here should be perfectly fine. Now, for the electronics assembly hall, we're gonna point so the road is facing towards the warehouse and hug it as much as possible to the rail yard itself. We don't need or want to connect the rail yard over here. Then use the factory connection, connect it over here to the road, and we are done on this side. Now the tricky part, the north side. This one will be hell for you to implement. Hopefully you're going to manage. Let's start off firstly with a electrical components factory. The road is very important to point inwards. The inputs are also very important to be just exactly as I am showing over here, or else this build will not work or might not work. Leave some space between this just in case you're gonna plan a road. I'm not 100% sure I'm gonna build it here. So starting as far off as I can over here. Then I'm going to take up, actually I don't think this is the highest I can go. So let's delete it from over here, and actually I think it will be way simpler to start it from this side. So let's retake it back, the electronics factory, point the road inwards and go as far as possible. Good. Now let's take an open storage medium. This will be the place from where our steel will come in. Make sure the road is pointing outwards to the north, not to the south. Currently it's pointing to the south. Now it's pointing to the north. You can use the T key with absolutely no problems. Make sure that the connection is hugging as much as possible on this side. There we go. Something like this should be fine. For the tricky part, including yet another electronics factory on this side in a way that makes sense and it's easily connectable to everything. Let's see where it will be possible. Somewhere around here should be fine. If both connections do not appear, that's also perfectly fine. And now let's build the second factory connection just like this. We got our second electrical components factory. The third electrical components factory will go over here, leaving a ton of room between. Something like this should be fine. And now let's handle the roads. Over here, connect the road just like this. Then starting as close as possible to the first electrical components factory that we created, let's extend the road. Now grab a bridge, yoink it on top until 9 meters or so, make it beautiful if needed, and then come down with it until 0 meters. Make sure to also extend it a bit, just like this. Over here, we are going to jump yet another bridge to 9 meters, like this. By the way, it's worth noting that you should also build your road firstly, together with the railroad, just to make sure that the bridge end from here has access to it. Just play around with it until it works. Then coming down with the bridge and lowering it as much as possible. There we go. This is a very janky connection, but it's the only way working. And connect this side too, together with this industry. Perfect. We got 3 out of the 4 electrical components factory. Let's move back to the south side over here. On this side, we are going to firstly place a mechanical components factory that hugs the road as much as possible. Yes, this time, as you can see, it's connecting close to the building. This is exactly what I want to see. Beforehand, it was like this, and connecting to the 3rd connection point over there. By making it like this, you are having the closest connection point to the warehouse and the furthest connection point to the storage. Here it fits just nicely. This one, we're not going to need the connection here and neither here. Firstly, let's place the plastic recycling plant and then attempt to rebuild the plastics factory right around here. Let's see where it fits. There we go. And let's see if the road over here is passable. It does not seem like it's passable currently. Yep, not at all. Editor me here. Make sure that the road of the open storage points to the south side and you can connect it to the already existing road on the left side. It's important to be like this. This seems pretty straight for me. Let's see. And now factory connection here works. Here works. And here it works. Perfect. The last thing we're gonna need to do is to build a bridge over the entire thing. So let's see from where can we start the bridge building. Okay, this seems like an exit. Perfect, finally. Okay, and make sure that this is connecting over here. If it doesn't, simply create a road like this, and here like this. Good, we finally got the electrical components factory connected. Editor me again. I completely forgot to connect the factory to the warehouse. Also, later down the line, I'm gonna put the garbage bin over there. I'm not re-recording this, just pay attention to it and not make the same mistake. And let's also build the road. Okay, now we got the building layouts properly set up. This was indeed the most difficult part to set up. Now we're gonna need the station. In here, you can use bus stations, tram stations, trolley bus stations, or whatever you want. Also, railway also works. I'm just gonna go for a simple bus stop and place it somewhere close-ish enough to the road over here. Perfect. Now this will give me direct access to some buildings. Not all of them, just some. And let's check to which ones we have access. Almost everything apart from the oil and this part. Okay, in order to fix it, we're gonna use, you guessed it, the underground underpasses. We are going to place one over here. One that exits on this side, which will serve the two buildings from here. Connected with underground passageways just to see where we are standing. If some infrastructure is in the way, just build firstly lower to the ground, let's say 9 meters, and then just come back up. Perfect. Now this connected a single factory, this one. Let's see if we can't connect the other one too by placing some more roads. Here we go. Now let's recheck the bus station. We can finally access this electrical components factory. Next thing is to check for these 3 factories over here. This one should be extremely simple. We are going to get one of these. See if we can squeeze it between. I did see it able. There we go. If it doesn't work on this side, simply delete this road. Place an underground overpass over here, pointing it in the right direction. Something like this should be fine. And then place a gravel road that connects over here. We can't place it directly on it. Hopefully that should be enough. Let's do the connections underground and see how it works. Again, similar situation. I'm gonna need to jump to 9 meters and then jump back up. Like this should be perfectly fine. And let's see the bus stop. Can it reach? Yes, it can reach the recycling plant. It cannot reach yet the plastics factory. No worries. We can connect it over here. Well, in this case, if this type of things happen, again, underground passages. Placing one over here. And connecting the last one. Well, this is slightly awkward. We're gonna need to delete the below one. Grab one that goes over here. And then this one goes here. And we should not have any more problems. I think we are pretty close and we can just move this bus station a bit closer and it should work perfectly fine. Let's redo the bus station connection. Weirdly enough, nope, not yet. Okay, F it. This means that we're just gonna place another underpass. Coming over here. And this one will be a very short one since it will connect like this. And hopefully now it really works. Perfect. Finally, we have access to every single building to this layout. Quite the tricky situation, but hey, it worked in the end. Now, you're gonna wonder about garbage, how you're gonna handle garbage. Well, that's pretty simple. Wherever you have space, place a garbage container. So we are going to start on this side. I did see some space, there we go. Now this one is handled. On this side, these two will be handled. On this other side, seems like there will be a problem with the one over here. Let's see, can we hug it somewhere around here? If not, we are going to need to play around with the footpaths. Actually, now I do remember the footpath over here is useless. So let's remove it. And these footpaths are also useless because we did opt for going for an underground underpass over here. And also this road is useless. God, I feel like Bob Ross right now. Happy accidents, guys. Happy accidents. Let's continue out with waste. Try as much as possible to use the stand for big garbage containers. This is because they offer better filtering, but it's not mandatory. There we go. Another one on this side. And does one fit over here? Nope, it doesn't. Then let's go for the small ones, which it clearly fits here and also over here. Perfect. The last garbage container would be for our electronic components factory, which I'm gonna conveniently place it here. Good. Now everything should be handled unless this guy doesn't have it. Yep, this guy doesn't have it. So let's place another one on this side. Now everyone has a garbage container to handle their garbage. In regards to incinerators, on this build, I'm not going to include any incinerators. As I mentioned, the best place to put this is nearby your oil industry. This is because you can simply take a liquid pump with a splitter, place it, I don't know, somewhere around here, and then underground pipe the oil directly to the building itself. It seems like it's a bit too far, no worries. And now I have another kilometer to just pipe my oil directly from the place where I have oil pumps or nearby my oil working station. With the build out of the way, let's check the profits you can make and also how many workers you're gonna need. In terms of workers, you are expected to need 1040 people per shift or 3120 workers in total. Before going into profits, yes, burn me in the comment section that I have not included an early start profits chart over here. Just the 9080s start. We just passed the 45 minutes mark on this video, and the spaghetti code Peter included kinda pissed me off. What you're seeing on the screen right now, it's actually the modern layout, the old one that I planned out before discovering that the electrical components and the electronics factories change recipes. And I had to think about another layout, the one that I showed previously, and re-record the entire previous section. That kind of triggered me very much. Moreover, the profits by themselves, they will change based on the year and also on the global events like iron shortages or stuff like that. You cannot expect the same exact profits that I am getting. Just close enough profits. Let's look a bit at the profits. It looks like somewhere around 800,000 rubles per month in 1982. As we can see, it averages out somewhere around there. Sometimes it goes to 600 or 400. I think this was the beginning, but in general, it looks very profitable. Again, looks. The best profits are made on electronics, of course. And again, I want to repeat myself, it looks. Well, let's see the profit margin. Just as a note over here, I am not factoring in the worker feeding, the worker transportation, and the water and electricity use, just the raw resources. And these values were taken half a year after importing and exporting stuff. Moreover, this time, when I wrote the script, I was smart enough to both save the game and take screenshots in order to compare the stuff. Let's start off firstly with the mechanical parts. This one is kind of utter garbage at the beginning to export. Let's see why exactly. Well, steel is bought at 457 rubles per ton. The mechanical components over here requires 22 tons of steel to create 15 tons of mechanical components. Also, mechanical components currently are being sold at 651 rubles per ton. To make one single mechanical component, you're gonna need 1.4 tons of steel. Therefore, the buy price for 1.4 tons of steel is 670 rubles. For my pricing at this very specific moment, it only makes sense for local usage because you are selling it at $651, but it's costing you 670 rubles to make. This is without any impacts of global events like iron prices going up or down. Of course, if it's going up, it's even worse. If it's going down, it might be profitable. We're gonna see when we're gonna move to Siberia done right. For now, let's move to plastics. To make plastic, you're gonna need 0.45 chemicals and 4 oil per ton of plastic. The buy price for 0.45 chemicals is somewhere around 486, and for oil 136 rubles, bringing the production value at 622. The plastics themselves sell for 599 rubles. So yet again, plastics are not good to be exported in 9080 without any global events affecting it, because it makes you a negative profit. Basically, it produces for 622, but it sells for 599. Moving on to electrical components over here in 9081. For one electrical component, you're gonna need a total of 0.57 tons of plastics, 0.61 tons of steel, and 0.48 tons of chemicals. Now, if we're gonna make plastics into raw resources, you're gonna need a total of 0.25 chemicals and 2.28 oil. Let's sum up all the resources, and in total, you're gonna need 0.73 tons of chemicals, 0.61 tons of steel, and 2.28 tons of oil. The buy prices for these are 788 rubles for the chemicals, 749 for the steel itself, and 77 rubles for oil. This brings up the total to 1,614 rubles. Let's see, electrical components by themselves are selling at 1,434 rubles. Again, another resource that is not good to sell. It will only be useful for local production, since you're actually paying somewhere around 200 rubles to export everything. Even by using your own oil, it's still 123 rubles loss. At the beginning, it makes more sense to only sell them if you've got the steel industry or the chemicals industry up and running to make a profit on them. And the final one, the electronics themselves. Are they going to make you a profit? Well, let's see. To produce 1 ton of electronics in 1981, you're going to need 0.5 electro components, 0.75 plastics, and 0.5 mechanical components. This brings the total cost to 807 rubles for the electro components, 466 for plastics, and 335 for mechanical components, bringing the total value for a single ton of electronics to be produced at 1,608 rubles. Electronics by themselves are selling at 1,733 rubles, meaning you're making 125 rubles profits per ton. To me, it's kind of weird that electrical components, mechanical components, and plastics are worthless and non-profitable to trade in 1980s. But then again, thinking this in an opposite direction, you are no longer importing electronics. It's already a huge cutoff from the buy price, since for electronics you're gonna use several tons per month. Everything else you're producing here in terms of electronics is just extra money at the moment. Also, let's go a bit to Siberia done right. What happens in 40 years? In Siberia done right, basically it was affected by global events, it was affected by fires, by everything basically. And also the year is 2002, 40 years later. Let's check again the mechanical components. Again, the recipe does not change for it, therefore we just need to calculate the pricing. I'm not gonna redo the math, I'll just tell you directly the pricing. In this scenario, we're gonna see that mechanical components are sold at 3,410 rubles, but it takes only 2,636 rubles, based on the steel price that I have over here, to make it. That's a 700 plus profits already, so that is quite good. Let's see about plastics. Well, for plastics, it takes 3,984 rubles for chemicals and 112 rubles for oil, clocking in at 4,096 rubles to make it. Plastics are also selling at 4,356 rubles. That's kind of a poor profit of 200 rubles or so. But let's see, after 40 years, is it still worth to only sell electronics and pocket the electrical components? Well, let's check it out. The electrical components at the moment, it costs 0.91 plastics, 0.91 steel, and 0.75 chemicals. Again, splitting the plastics means somewhere around 364 oil and 0.40 chemicals. Bringing up all the resources, it means 364 oils, 0.91 steel, and 1.15 tons of chemicals. Checking this pricing over here of the last episode of Siberia Done Right that we've made, there's a cost of 102 rubles for oil, 1,735 for steel, and then we got the chemicals and 10,182 rubles, bringing the total cost for electrical components at 11,997. Comparing that to the sell price of 16,562 rubles, we are making quite the profits over here, roughly around almost 4,000 ish per electrical component. So finally, after 40 years, you can actually sell the electrical components. How about electronics? Well, the electronics need 0.75 electro components, 1.14 plastics, and 0.75 mechanical component, which roughly translates that you're going to spend roughly around 18,000 to 19,000 rubles to make one single ton. Well, the selling price for this is actually 24,000, almost 25,000 rubles, netting you a profit of somewhere around 4,000 to 6,000 rubles, which is kind of quite profitable, it seems. Let's also check out the usage of electronics in a city. This is the city that I tested the orphanages in my orphanage guide. Over here we have 20,000 citizens, of which 80% are with higher education. Remember, higher education workers, they will consume more electronics. Checking a bit per month the electronics usage, it seems like it's revolving somewhere around 15 to 13 electronics per month, every single time. Now, going back to Siberia Done Right series, I'm going to check it from domestic production and consumption. The reasoning being is that over here I'm both importing and also using local resources when it comes to electronics. Therefore, let's go to consumption of resources, citizens facility, and do again a month worth. We can see electronics at 844, 684, 12, 13, 11, 10, even 9. Basically, in Siberia Done Right, not only that I have a 50% education, but also we have the all down here from here hotels that the tourists will come and get electronics from this small electronics shop over here. This also helps boosting the amount of electronics used. Of course, tourists also produce some profits from the selling of electronics, which are sent into spending in shops and restaurants. As we can see, per month, it's quite good. It's almost coming to the spending in hotels by themselves. Of course, this includes both the restaurants and the electronics shop. Therefore, it goes without saying that you're going to need multiple engineering centers in order to satisfy the citizens' needs and the tourist needs. Moreover, the vehicle repair stations also use electronics to maintain your vehicles. Albeit, I couldn't find a proper way to check out if electronics are separate for the vehicle maintenance versus the overall consumption. We cannot find it in industry. Maybe somehow it's linked to citizen facilities, and that's why sometimes we see high numbers like 15, whilst other times we see low numbers like 5 tons. I'm not 100% sure, just take it with a grain of salt over here. Now, jumping to how it looks like when everything is built. As I mentioned, try to place your plastics industry and electronics industry nearby the oil refinery. This is from Siberia done right. I have the oil refinery together with 2 power plants over here, and then I call this the double quotes engineering center because I'm producing electronics, of course. And over here, it's nearby. Well, that kind of covers everything related to electronics, electrical components, mechanical parts, and plastics. Until next time, I'm the Honey Badger, and I'm out.